Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is the Granite Mountain Movie Club. I am your host. I go by Granite. We have a very special guest today. We've got Ben Wilson. Ben Wilson is his first-time guest, and a little about Ben. So, if you listen to this show, you know that I'm kind of interested just generally in the art of podcasting and broadcasting more generally. Ben he's probably the first real podcaster guest that I've had on the show. Ben has some things that I'll let him explain in a second, but Ben's been involved with some big podcasts, and he has a big podcast of his own. So like lots and lots of real people listen to, people that aren't just the crazy mentally ill people online like most of my fans. So if you're one of my mentally ill fans, leave a message in the comments. But Ben, tell all of my crazy, insane fans what you're working on.
Well, thanks, Granite. You made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. This is it's nice to feel legitimate. So I'm a podcaster now, I guess. I started a podcast just in my spare time 5 years ago called How to Take Over the World, and it's done well, and it has like a good number. I'm not Malcolm Gladwell, but it's got a good number of listeners, and it's become my job. So go check it out. Help feed my family. Every time you download a podcast episode of How to Take Over the World, 10-month-old, gets dinner that night. And every time you don't, he doesn't. So, that's on you.
10 cents a day. You could feed.
Yeah, exactly. For only one listen a day.
I assume it's just available everywhere, right? Apple, Spotify, whatever else.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. And I'll put the links in there so people can find it. And then we've got a multi-time guest. Giordano, or we'll real quick, Giordano, I'll say. So the guest is Giordano, by the way. But I think it was 2 years ago, in October of 2020, or 2021, I think, that I recorded my first episode and you were the guest. You were the first guest.
Yes.
And you've been a guest, I don't know, 10 times or something now. A
handful of times. Battle Royale.
Yeah, that first episode, Battle Royale. If you're new to the show, go back, listen to every single episode, starting at number 1, Battle Royale.
You have to listen to all of them in order to really understand.
To understand the world that we live in,
It's a lot of world building. There's a lot of lore. Yeah.
But you haven't been on for a while. So what have you been up to lately? How's the Mambo Wizard? How's that going?
The Mambo verse continues to flourish. Actually, when we had that first podcast, I was still working on, I think I may have finished The Mambo Wizard, Breakfast is Served, my debut novel. But I was still sending it out or still just in the editing phase. So that wasn't even out yet when we did that first podcast. But I've been working on the audiobook for The Mambo Wizard, Breakfast is Served, which will be available this Christmas.
And are you recording it in your beautiful, I'm going to say baritone. I don't know if that's what actually
I don't know either. Yes, I'm recording it and doing silly, goofy voices. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, and basically humiliating myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Check it out.
Okay, awesome. And I'm going to go back real quick too. I feel like I undersold what Ben's working on. And for anyone who listens to this show, go listen to Ben's. He takes these important figures from history, great men of history, it seems kind of like, and breaks down like what it was that made them great, how they got to where they got. And if you listen to this show, you probably heard the Oppenheimer episode. He has a really good, I think you did two segments on Oppenheimer, both the movie and the person, where you touched on a bunch of stuff. I wish I would have known when I recorded my episode about it. But it was really good. So if anyone's listened to that, maybe that's an entry point. Go jump over there and listen to his Oppenheimer episodes.
Yeah, that we have an extended universe now. I don't know if you know what you just created, but now there's a synergy, and we'll have to have an Avengers podcast with Granite Mountain Movie Club and How to Take Over the World. Yeah.
All right. And so then today we're talking about a movie that I had not seen, and this was Ben's recommendation. And so I'm going to be counting on Ben to have some big brain takes on it. But it's King Arthur from 2017, and this was done by Guy Ritchie. And I was vaguely aware of this movie, but I did not see it when it came out. Unfortunately for this movie, a lot of people didn't see it. it cost quite a bit of money. I think it was about 175, and it did not make that back. So, and it was initially intended to be a kind of a universe of movies, kind of like a Marvel, but for the Arthurian legends. But it didn't make enough money, so I think they scrapped that idea.
Yeah, I think it was one of the biggest flops of the century, monetarily.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'll give my take real quick on it, and then maybe I'll let Giordano to give his take, and then you can tell us what about this movie is what led you to recommend it. So, like I say, I'd never seen this. I've now watched it twice, and the first time I saw it, I thought, that was fine. There was some stuff I liked a lot about it. I really liked that beginning with these massive elephants and stuff, and it's kind of a CGI. There's a lot of CGI, but I don't really mind if they are. There's situations like this, and we reviewed the movie Noah a couple months ago as well, where it has a similar thing going on where they're using so much CGI that it's just sort of, they're just kind of saying this is the universe. The universe is this is the texture of it. Just live with it. And I'm usually able to accept that. And I thought that intro thing looked really cool with the big elephants that are, they were the size of buildings, I guess. They're massive. Good action, good destruction. Throughout the movie, there's some very typical Guy Ritchie stuff going on. Fast cuts. A lot of it feels like a music video. Some of it feels like a video game. And then there's kind of like Matrix camera work, sort of slow down arrows and swords. The first time I watched it, I thought, this is fine. I watched it again. I liked it quite a lot. And I think there is a lot of, given, the source from where they're coming from, the King Arthur, Sword in the Stone, Merlin, all that stuff. There's a lot of symbolism and stuff to play around with there. So I would say, thanks for recommending it. I would probably never have checked this out otherwise. And I liked it, and it's, I'd say it's worth people's time if they haven't seen it.
Yeah. So I think it's the greatest movie of the 21st century. And anyone who can't see that is willfully blind or maybe dishonest. Okay. All right.
I can't wait to talk about this.
Okay.
Well, before you go further, Giordano, are you willfully blind, or
or you dishonest? You got to pick one or the other. Or do you think it's the greatest movie of the 21st?
I don't know what I am on that. The bell curve meme. Maybe I'm just like a midwit, just complete imbecile, which maybe. But my experience with this film, I remember it came out, I think, I looked it up, 2017. I did not see it in the theater, although at the time I probably would have enjoyed it. I really wanted to watch it. So I remember actually renting it from Redbox or something when it came out and bringing it home because I'm like, cool, King Arthur. I don't care if it sucks. It's just like swords and armor, and I'm into any of that. I'll take all of that. I don't care. And I'm start to watch the film, and then the first thing that sort of set off like a red flag was Jude Law, whom I love. Jude Law, like one of my favorite actors. Love this man, but he's just like walking around like with his Norwood, receding hair. He's like the king of the Norwoods, and
he's got a dye. He's got a dye job too.
It looks. I don't know. It just looks weird because it doesn't look super regal. But maybe I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's supposed to be evil or something. And I see this just like this king with the the balding king, and he doesn't even have a beard or a mustache or anything. And I remember I actually did not make it through the movie. I actually turned it off, which is saying something because people who know me, like I watch anything. Like I watch such crap, but I could not make it through this film. So, and I actually forgot that I turned it off. So when Granite mentioned, "Oh, we're going to watch King Arthur, Legend of the Sword," I'm like, "All right, let's try this movie again," because I don't really remember a lot of it. Started watching it again, watched the whole thing, and then I think I messaged Granite and I just said, I just want to confirm that was the movie. I watched the right movie, right? Like it was, because there's a ton of King Arthur films. So, but then he said, yeah, that was the one, 2017. So, I mean, that's all I want to say about it right now.
There's actually there was another King Arthur 2017. It's just some like low budget, like weird thing that had like 1 out of 10 stars on IMDb. But okay, so yeah, Ben, tell us what are we missing?
Yeah.
So here's what I'll say about King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, and the reason I recommended it and wanted to rewatch it is I think it's an okay movie with a great movie living inside of it. And Mountain, I don't know if you're planning, or Granite, I don't know if you're planning on getting into some of the history of the movie, but essentially it was kind of a mess. So Guy Ritchie goes in to direct it, and they come out with a movie that they can test screen, and it gets panned by test audiences. So say, okay, let's basically go back and reshoot this thing. And even from the beginning, even before that occurred, there were 2 different writers, and they were using both scripts. And so they kind of try and merge the scripts, and then they go back for reshoots. And so it's really kind of like 3 or 4 movies thrown into one. And so if it seems like a mess, it's because it is a mess. But I think if you could just strip away a lot that's extraneous, there's a great story there. And to me, I think one of the reasons that it resonates with me is that it gets kingship right. And Arthur comes across as a believable king. And there are moments in the film where you think, oh yeah, I get why someone would want to die for that guy. And at a time when most protagonists are either actively annoying or just kind of vacuous, just kind of an empty place, at best, upon which the viewer can project themselves. I think of Harry Potter, and Harry Potter is the ultimate like non-character, the actual character of Harry Potter. Right. He just, you can't really say anything about him. And you look at Star Wars, and Luke Skywalker is kind of a non-character as well. And one of the reasons I like this is that this movie says, no, actually Han Solo is the king and should be the king. And that's the person that people want to follow. And I think they get that right. And so I think the character of King Arthur is so good that it kind of redeems the whole movie, even though the plot is a little bit convoluted and a mess.
Well, when you say it's a mess, that reminds me that like I watched it once, and then I read the Wikipedia plot summary, and I felt like there was things that, I mean, I understood, the main big points, but I guess, I did actually miss a lot of little things or transitional things that were probably lost in the mess or something.
About 3/4 of the way through this, watching the film, the movie, I don't even know if you could say it had a plot as much as it was just like a pastiche of different sensory experiences and visuals. And because I feel like I could not explain the plot with a gun to my head, to be honest. And I felt like I needed to. I didn't look up the Wikipedia. I tried to actually. I have a little notebook where I try to keep notes of stuff, but I have notes like Jude Law gets nosebleed, giant snake, and large tentacle Ursula woman. Like I didn't really understand anything that was going on at any given moment. That's not, although that's very typical for me. That's just like my movie viewing experience. But plot wise, I felt that once you explained that was it you or Ben who said it was multiple scripts kind of meshed together, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So I in preparation for this, I kind of, obviously I took some notes, and I started writing down kind of what I might have done to make this plot make sense. And I think the essential plot works, which is King Arthur's father is killed. He goes into exile. He's raised in a brothel. He basically becomes the king of like his block, right? He's essentially like a minor gangster running.
Yeah, he's a mob. Yeah, he's a mob boss. Yeah,
running a minor extortion racket, and nothing too nefarious, but like a minor mob boss. And And then he is forced to withdraw the sword from the stone. He, with a band of followers, escapes, but some of his friends are captured, and therefore he has to essentially do a heist in order to go save them and take the throne and defeat his uncle Vortigern in order to take the throne. I think like that could make sense as a plot. What I just said is a plot. Now, obviously, the movie is much more convoluted than that. I think probably the best representation of that is there's this thing they're trying to get at, which is the sword is like too powerful for him, and he either won't or can't take hold of the sword and take his full power to himself. And there are like 4 different points in the movie where it's like, no, you have to grasp the sword, and part of that is looking into the past and seeing this moment when his father was killed. But the problem is they keep doing it. So there's one moment that he grabs it and he looks, and then he has to go to this thing called the Darklands, which they never explain, and then he grasps the sword and can hold it. But then again, they're kind of fighting at the dojo, and he grabs the sword again, and you once again have the moment of like, oh, here's King Arthur finally grabbing the sword. And then again after that, like he gets bit by a snake and goes on like an acid trip and has to like accept the sword once again. And so it's like, this is a plot point that could have worked, but the fact that you're repeating it 3 or 4 times makes you just think, okay, well, I guess I don't get it, because I thought he already did this. Like, why does he have to keep looking into the past and keep trying to grab the sword?
Yeah, what you mentioned though a bunch of points where I probably was confused, but they were obviously very classic or archetypal events in the story. Like the sword is something he has to grow into, or he has to like his role as a king in general. It's like the crown. I'm trying to remember which movie it was or show. It might have been Game of Thrones, which I've not fully seen. I'm just kind of familiar with it, but it's sort of like you grow into this crown. That's kind of a line that you see a lot of these like sword and sorcerer things. And then yeah, he's going into the underworld or the dark world to do like I guess I shouldn't give Jordan Peterson credit, but because he didn't come up with this, but he's the one who's talked about it a lot in the last few years. But you have to go into hell to save your father, which is like explicitly like what he's doing in the dark world and stuff. So that those things being like classic pieces of like story architecture, I was simultaneously confused, but also like, oh, I get, I know what they're doing.
Which is why I say it's a great movie living inside an okay movie, because I totally agree. But that he has to go through the Darklands. I don't know if you remember that. Then he also has a scene where the lady in the lake like pulls him into the lake, and he does basically the same thing again.
Yeah, he tries to throw away the sword,
right?
And it's like sort of the Destiny theme. It's like, no, you don't really get to outrun any of this. You have to take this,
right? And
I actually was from watching the sword being its own sort of character or half alive or something. It reminded me of, I don't know if any of you have ever read the British fantasy author Michael Moorcock, who wrote the Elric saga. Anyway, he has a magic sword named Stormbringer, but the sword is evil. And every time this character Elric uses the sword sort of takes over and just like wants to just keep killing and murdering people. And that's what I don't understand what the magical power was of the sword beyond like it would sort of have these like little explosions and then just disintegrate his enemies and turn them into ash. And I think
it's called being based. The sword is based.
The sword of basedness.
Yeah,
the power of basedness. So like, I actually thought because I misunderstood or I didn't get it, but I was like, is he struggling with just becoming pure evil, like going to the dark side, or is he struggling with if I become king, I'm just going to want to turn to evil and power is going to corrupt me, etc. Although that would seem to go against the kingliness of Arthur. So I don't know.
To me, and I think this is what was confusing about it, is there's kind of two different elements that go into it. And one is just that he's supposed to be sort of a practical person, right? Who likes his life, who likes what he does, and doesn't want to get like caught up in the politics. That's essentially what I catch from the beginning, right? Of you want to expose yourselves to danger for this cause. Like, I'm not about causes. I just kind of want life to go on as it is. And then the second thing is, once his friends start dying, then he's like, well, I really don't want to take this on because I don't want to put those around me in danger. But I agree that the reluctance is never super well explained in terms of.
I would map it, just the way it feels in the movie. It seems to map mostly to worthiness and intention. Like, he's maybe doesn't feel worthy because he or he doesn't have the right. He doesn't want to rule. Doesn't have that like will or something. But the sword and other factors keep insisting that he doesn't really have a choice.
Which is funny because he is sort of authoritative by nature, especially in the first fourth of the movie, right? You see him on the streets and he's a naturally take charge. Any new situation, he's with the druid for the first time and he's turns around on his horse, is sort of unwilling to surrender to the idea that he's a captive, and is just kind of takes control of the situation and, is hitting on her and stuff like that. And so it doesn't necessarily check out with his personality in the first quarter of the movie that he would be the person who's reluctant to take charge in general. But I do think somewhat that's what they're getting at.
The story or the film, I think, would have been improved if he was actually wholeheartedly embracing, becoming the king, because that does seem more of the persona of somebody raised in a brothel and raised around prostitutes. And this guy's basically a pimp. Like, he's literally beating up the customers who are mistreating his prostitute moms or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it would be much more interesting if he was like, I'm going to be the king. I'm killing all of my enemies, and just embraced it, instead of, it's almost like they have to try to make it, everything that has a character claiming authority always has to be reluctant, maybe, or maybe just to show his humility, that he's not trying for power. But that might actually have been more interesting. I don't know.
Does he? I mean, he knows he was. Presumably, he knows he was like found in a basket like Moses and raised by these working women at the brothel.
Although,
does he know he's royalty, or does he just know he was hidden for some reason? Like,
well, at some point he does say to Vortigern, "I'm the bastard son of a whore," and so I think on some level one of the prostitutes may have told him, "You're my son." So it's actually not totally clear that he even knows that he was found. In any case, I don't. Judging by his surprise when he grasps the sword, I definitely don't think he understands that he's royalty.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize Vortigern was his uncle.
Wait, you didn't realize that?
Jude Law is his uncle. That was his father's brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's Eric Bana's brother.
Yeah.
Remember we had covered the Northman on this show.
Man. Yeah.
It's pretty similar to the Northman or Hamlet thing,
right?
It's not too far off at all, really. And the Northman I noticed as well. It's it has this a witch, right, from a foreign land, who comes and helps him along in his path, and in the Northman, he has to descend into the netherworld or whatever to gain wisdom or courage or whatever as well. So there's a lot of similarities I thought with that one.
True.
Ben, have you seen that one?
Yeah. Mom, if you're listening, no, I haven't. But to you guys, yes, I have. Yeah. And I mean, of course, Northman is based on the story of Hamlet, which is, that's a story that's like 1,000 years old. And so, of course, there are some sort of timeless tropes that are involved in that story. I feel like I've done a bad job, though, of selling King Arthur, Legend of the Sword so far. So, like, I'll pivot from trying to make the movie make sense and saying what could have been better to, like, maybe we can talk about a few elements that did work about the film. One is, and I didn't love everything about the scene, but I thought that the dojo scene where he first kind of fights with the sword is legitimately good. In particular, that moment when, they're surrounded by what are essentially stormtroopers, and he's trying to get everyone to escape out of the sewer, and they're kind of saying, "No, you first." And I think that's where you get this idea of sort of, like royal fealty, right? This true idea of loyalty where they're saying, "No, you go first or we're not going." And he's saying, "Get in the dang sewer." And, they finally start making excuses. "Sorry, boss, I'm afraid of the dark. Sorry, I don't like rats." And then he takes off his jacket and says, "What's wrong with you people? Determined to die." And then for the first time, and to me, that makes the most sense as the movie. They should have stripped away everything else. That makes the most sense to me. Of that would be the moment when he does grasp the sword and says, "Okay, this is what I'm willing to step up to the plate for, which is to protect my friends." And that is very true to the story of King Arthur, which is all about the Round Table, and not just about Arthur himself, but about his loyalty to his knights and their loyalty to him. And so I thought that was, for me, probably the strongest moment of the movie.
I think that as far as things that I think work, it kind of just depends how you feel about some of like Guy Ritchie's style, which I made myself like, I just said, I'm going to just go with this, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I mentioned earlier that opening sequence, I still think that's really awesome. Like, you got these huge elephants that are knocking over like a town or a whole like a kingdom, I guess. And then you got Eric Bana like jumping off a bridge and letting his horse fall to the ground and die, which I thought was cool. And then he like jumps inside of this, this elephant thing, whatever, and he has this magic sword and he kills this guy. I don't know. The beginning was just kind of like heavy metal, like a heavy metal music video or something. It was cool.
It looked beautiful too.
Yeah, it was really cool. It reminded me also, of like a heavy metal, like a level from Halo or something. And the giant elephants, you see the giant elephants like the size of a mountain, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, cool. This is like, this is a fantasy world. It's not trying to be necessarily realistic, and it has a very stylized look. And then, but then the movie actually had like several openings, or at least more than one, because it starts with like this text, and it's very solemn and it's very quiet, and then like the heavy metal opening, and then isn't there like a second opening that's also in slow motion with the titles coming up? Now
I do.
I'm scrubbing through it. They don't start showing like the a lot of the credits until about 12 minutes.
Oh yeah,
like the intro credits.
It's like kind of a long pre-credits sequence.
Yeah.
It feels very big, very serious, which to me, and I don't want to say this is tonally, it was confusing because it has a very epic, dark fantasy feel, but then it switches into it feels like I'm watching like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, but
are you talking about the montage?
Fair? Yes, right. And mostly what I'm talking about is their inscrutable, impenetrable accents, which are very difficult.
That's all. I didn't have too much trouble with the accents.
Oh, okay, and I thought it was, it's like they just were like, "Oi!" There's a lot of "Oi, mate!" Oh, what are you doing there, mate? And like when you think of King Arthur, it's funny because it's like an inversion of the King Arthur, everything being like so high, and I don't know how to describe it, a high fantasy feel. But then this makes it, very down to earth, very gritty.
Guy Ritchie's incorporating like London street culture into some of this.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's using, and then like he's doing the fast cuts, like in that montage and stuff, and the music is, how you remember like the Knight's Tale movie where
yes, it was like the
they work in all this modern music. He doesn't exactly work in modern music. Well, it is modern styled music, yeah, and he he's just playing around with all that stuff. I mean, you can, that's just kind of a choice, I guess, whether or not you like that or not. Like, and I just accepted it. I just like chose to kind of like it.
One of the reasons I did like it is there's this book which I have never read, but someone has told me about, called Bronze Age Mindset, and and I know nothing about it except for what I'm about to tell you, which is I have heard that he talks a lot about owned space, this idea of owned space, and owned space is essentially what it sounds like is the space and opportunity to sort of express your full development and your prowess as a human. And what he essentially says is we all live in owned space where we're very constrained. People have told me he said this, and that there's very few opportunities to find your own space. And what he urges people to do at the end of the book, I've been told, is to sort of sink down into the underworld, because that's one of the few places, sort of in these dark cracks, in these forgotten worlds, is where you can still find a modicum of freedom amongst the drug dealers and the prostitutes and all of this. And I thought that was, my viewing of this movie preceded have someone telling me about this one chapter of this very strange book. But I do think that there is a connection to be made there. And I think, he wasn't intentionally trying to make that point, which is what I think makes it more true to life, that in a world in which everything is captured by this sort of oppressive power that stifles life, the one place where you can go to still find your freedom is this underworld. And I found that very interesting, which is, I think, maybe what made sense to me about it's high fantasy at first, and it's this amazing, extraordinary world that you want to be a part of. But because he's excluded from that world and he's sent adrift, now he has to try and sort of recapture his freedom by finding it in the underworld.
Yeah, and that speaks to his kingly nature, and we all kind of, I think most of us accept this deep down, which even if we don't want to admit it, because sometimes it means that it might mean accepting that we are maybe not as much as we think we are. But I think we all kind of, with maybe some exceptions, we all kind of land where we deserve, or where and so, he's like, he has noble blood, and, maybe some people don't believe that sort of thing matters. I do. I think it does matter. But, his dad was obviously this brave king, and it seemed like a beloved leader. And he's bringing some of that with him. And it's like, if you remove him from his actual royal opportunities and just put him on the streets, he's going to find a way, whether, he's just naturally going to do that. He's going to find some way to gain status and climb like the hierarchy. And yeah, I mean, he does it basically becoming a gangster. And we think about this, we talk about this all the time, like in the modern age, how there are people around us who are maybe not doing what they could do because the opportunities are because the environment's too controlled or too sterile or something, or just, but there's guys around us who in a previous era, and you see this joke on Twitter sometimes, it's like, 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago, this man would have been, leading, legions into battle or something. But yeah, some people just have it, and he has it. So in that setting, he becomes a criminal. And I thought that was a fun choice, to make him some sort of, I'm not sure all the things he's doing. He's thieving as a kid, I think. Right. But then, he's doing other stuff, but yeah, I thought that was a good way to reframe the story. I don't think that's in the traditional legends.
Can
No.
I just say, I thought this is, I must compliment Ben on this explanation because I feel like it just blew my mind. And although I would still, most of my notes are just me kind of making fun of the movie. However, so I don't know if I actually think it's a good movie. However, this explanation really did, I can appreciate it now. I feel like it that does make a lot of sense in that if you look at it from that point of view, I can understand what it's trying to do. I think of when I think of King Arthur and Arthurian legend and stuff, I wrote down chivalry or the protection of women, the protection of femininity. Or that's why knight culture developed, or at least that's my understanding. And I thought that was something very clever about making the sort of the origin story of chivalry from a man being raised in a brothel and being raised by all of these prostitutes that he sees as mother figures. He had some. I wrote some line here. He said something about one of the prostitutes, like, "I would give my life for her," or maybe she's taught me so much. And he was very upset with the prostitute being killed or something like that. And he was like, "No, everything I've ever learned, I learned from this prostitute," which I think was very funny to me because, like, the reality is, if you've ever hung out with prostitutes, like what Bronze Age Pervert was talking about, if you've ever hung out with actual prostitutes or women who are, on the prostitute level, I feel like there's not really a ton that you're going to learn from them, especially like you're not going to learn a lot of the right life lessons from them. However,
Giordano, I've watched movies. I know that every prostitute has a heart of gold. I don't know what you're
mean,
talking about. That must be true, right?
I mean, I saw Julia Roberts. She was really sweet. She was a really nice girl. I mean, then, that trope probably exists. They are out there. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're great women. I love them all. But my point is actually just making the idealized version of the prostitute. This is Arthur is trying to see, like, well, he lives in a world where all women are prostitutes, which is, that's 2023. That's current day. And he's trying to, like, reform things. And he lives in the dark, crappy world ruled by evil Jude Law, and Jude Law he's evil, and he's made the world he lives in evil. So so they're going to be a ragtag band of criminals and prostitutes, and they're going to reform things and make it better. So yeah, I get it. I think something clicked.
Jude Law, you guys, I have this fascination with this guy, Brian Johnson, this longevity guy. You know him?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Jude Law kind of looks like him at parts of the movie. He's got his dyed black hair, and he looks like, some scenes he looks very, because he's going in and out of this, like, deal he's made with a sorcerer or something, where sometimes his power is waning, so he looks more sickly, and he just kind of reminds me of this Brian Johnson guy.
Is that why he has to continually murder everyone?
Yeah,
that's not why he's killing every female character. He has to murder her at some point.
He has to make a sacrifice to those swamp creature girls.
Yes.
I will say this. Okay. I love Jude Law as an actor. And if you want to see the best TV show probably ever made, it's called The Young Pope. Have either of you guys seen it?
Oh,
I haven't. I've heard it recommended, but I've never seen it.
I saw the first season, which was fantastic.
Yeah, I started the second season. I didn't finish it. I think the first season is the only one worth watching. But it's essentially a show that asks the question, what if the Pope was Catholic? Which I think is a very interesting question to ask. But Jude Law is a fantastic actor. And he really sells, I think, those murder scenes where he's got to murder, I think the first one is his wife and the second one is his daughter. You just, like, really, and it's amazing given the movie he was in and what he was kind of given to work with in terms of a script. And I imagine in terms of a production process, like, he gives some extraordinary acting. And I think one of the great crimes of the movie is that for sort of the climactic scene, they make him the CGI
Balrog monster. Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman with double side, and like let us see Jude Law's face for the climactic scene. You know, he's such a good actor, and could have really sold it. And in fact, they do have him transform back into Jude Law for a second, and he gives a great performance for those last 2 seconds. But I actually, even though his character is a little inscrutable in terms of some of the writing decisions that are made for him, in terms of how Jude Law acts him, I think he does a terrific job.
Oh yeah, agreed.
Yeah, he's great. I agree with the thing about the monster, but but I also like the monster fight. It's again, it's like it's very cartoony, but it's also pretty awesome.
I agree. Yeah.
And Jude Law, can't say enough about how much I love this man. He's amazing. Although I feel like I forgot about The Young Pope, which that's incredible. And then the other movies I've seen him in are like AI and you know what? Gattaca. Love that one. But
Gattaca's
they did this thing where just like right at the beginning, towards the beginning of the film, where they're having some sort of council, and Jude Law, they're talking about the sorcerers that were evil, and in the olden days there were sorcerers, but they've all gone into hiding because they were hunted down because they're evil or something. And then one of them is like, weren't you raised by a sorcerer? And Jude Law, what are you implying? And then they just do like a jump cut to Jude Law being evil and like doing evil sorcerer stuff. So I mean, yeah. I felt like Jude Law would make a great evil king. But sometimes, yeah, like you said, the writing was a little inscrutable. Like, I'm trying to understand, like, Jude Law, what are you doing? Like, you catch more flies with honey. You know, he's torturing people to death, and he's trying to kill their rightful king in front of this crowd of all these people, I guess to try to win their hearts over, or just to show that he's more powerful. I just didn't quite understand him at times, but he still, he elevated everything.
He's building a tower, so sort of like a, classic symbol of hubris, some sort of Tower of Babel sort of thing, which of course like comes crashing down. And then I thought it was weird. I thought it was kind of a weird strategic move for him to do the sword testing publicly, because if one guy was the rightful heir and was able to pull the sword out, you wouldn't want there to be 1,000 witnesses.
Yeah.
So
right. I didn't get that either.
Strategic error right there, Jude Law.
I think to me, over and over again, as I thought of ways you could improve this movie, it's always just take away. So, although I will say, even though the decision to do a public pulling of the sword is sort of maybe doesn't make a ton of rational sense, it's a cool scene. It is a cool scene when he finally pulls it and all the people are like, "Oh, you're the guy, huh?"
Yeah, and David Beckham's there for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started with David Beckham. Yeah,
with this goofy nose, and that's part of the Beckham is part of that thing I meant about the London street culture, because he's not a Londoner, but
he is.
I thought he was from Manchester, but
he played from Manchester, but I looked up that he was originally from London.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But you got pit bulls in the movie. It's quite a few pit.
Yeah.
Bully
and pit bulls have had they've had a moment the last 5 years where people have started to realize that they're maybe not good dogs. You got all the snappy dialogue, which is just right out of Snatch and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got a multi-ethnic band of the Knights of the Round Table. One of the guys, even they refer to him at one point as Kung Fu George.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah, straight out of Arthurian legend.
I actually
before
you guys don't know about Sir Kung Fu George.
I wanted to ask if either of you, there was a line from Jude Law towards the end, where right before the final battle, and he's in his evil form, the evil dark form, and it sounded really a lot like he said, "Now lay with me," and I don't think he said that, because I don't know why he would be inviting Arthur to do that. But then it he might have said, "Now play with me."
Yeah.
Or perhaps then my wife actually said, I think he said, "Now blade with me." Does anyone know what he said?
He wanted to watch Wesley Snipes' Blade. Watch Blade with
Favorite
me.
movie.
And the fact that he wouldn't watch Blade with him just set him off.
That was it. It was the final straw. Anyway, sorry to derail, but I just thought that was funny, and I couldn't tell what he said.
Yeah. I think, back to my original point, so much of this movie could have been made better by just stripping things away. So, for example, they try and do the sword and the stone thing and the lady in the lake thing. And to me, the sword and the stone thing just like doesn't make sense. I don't like it when people pull magic just kind of out of nowhere, like it's a thing that you're supposed to know can happen. So he like throws up the sword, kneels down so that it comes into his back and turns him into a rock and sinks to the bottom of the lake. I'm like, sorry, did he just know that was a thing? Is that a thing you can do in this world? Like,
Ben, you're reading. These are like my notes verbatim. What you just said. Yeah.
And I think the when they do the lady in the lake scene, it's of course shot beautifully. I mean, Guy Ritchie's so stylish. Everything I love the way everything he shoots looks. It's a very stylish movie. But they should have just done that. They should have just leaned into the lady of the lake thing and not done this this hard to understand sword in the stone thing, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, plus Eric Bana hurls the sword into the air, and then I just was wondering, like, does he know that it's going to land on him and kill? Is he committing suicide, or was that an accident? Or I actually was thinking, oh, is this some sort of Arthurian lore that I'm not aware of? The of the sword throwing, and then it implies that he turned into the stone that the sword is being pulled out of. It was a little.
I don't think I realized that he's the stone.
I'm not sure if that was what they meant.
I'm pretty sure that's what they meant. Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense. Okay. I mean, I like that. That's actually cooler, but I wonder. Yeah, I don't know if I realized that, but I don't. And I have no idea if that is like a legend where I mean, I don't know. It's I guess if that was all intentional, you'd just say that's some sort of insurance policy on the future. He's like, okay, well, only my son will be able to get this sword, so. Or someone else worthy, and if someone does, then they can avenge me.
It would have made more sense if he had like a druid friend who's like, hey, there's this way, they're on the run. Vortigern has sort of ejected him from the capital and he's hot on his heels, and he says, hey, there's this way at least to protect this thing for your son, or something like that,
Well, so in the Wikipedia it says Merlin helped the original king, Bana. It said Merlin forged the sword.
That's right.
And Merlin's not in this movie. And I think they had planned, because they were going to have this like universe, they had planned to have a Merlin movie or something, but I'm not sure why they didn't have Merlin in here to.
I assume the reason is they wanted to get like an A-list actor. They thought this was going to work and it was going to become a spinoff.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh, if we don't really show him, we can get an A-list to do the actual movie later, but we can't afford to just like throw another A-list movie actor in right now.
Maybe they could get like a Bill Nighy Merlin. Cool. Like a British, really
John Cleese,
yeah.
Well, judging by the rest of the cast, it probably would have been more likely to be Idris Elba.
There was a rumor about Elba being in the movie, but
is that right?
But he said he was never cast in the movie, but some people had said he was.
In my notes, I have that this would have made a great, and this is what you were kind of saying, Ben, this would make a great fan edit. I feel.
Yes.
And there's so much interesting visual imagery and cool stuff going on. One of the choices, I don't know enough about Guy Ritchie. I've only ever seen, what was it, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I'm not sure what else he's done. But does he do like time jumps like this? Because I feel like he's done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he likes fast cuts a lot.
And he loves time jumps. He loves like people telling a story and then going back, and you're kind of seeing the what preceded the story to, and then cutting to the actual action. Yeah.
I feel like maybe this is just me because, I'm very slow, but I feel like just a chronological telling would have helped me. So, and that could be something that somebody could edit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not, but jumping back and forth. I don't know if it did it that much in the movie, but it was a little bit, I don't know. Whiplash.
I didn't I liked his style. I thought the
Mm.
movie basically worked for me, but I do wonder if it would have been a lot more successful, commercially, if it had just been more of a Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones straightforward.
This is- So see, this is the problem: is if people walked into Lord of the Rings, right? Imagine if they walk into Lord of the Rings and they're like, "Oi, oi, mate, we gotta go get that ring."
and there was
and just
there was
like
pit bulls,
and there's like Gandalf rolling in with pit bulls in like
Gollum
slow
is the pit
motion
bull.
and then fast motion, and I think
Yeah.
that people have this expectation with the sort of aesthetics, the Arthurian aesthetics, which are have become the universal fantasy aesthetic. Like for the entire world is the British medieval legendarium aesthetic. Like every fairy tale and stuff wants to be the castles and kings and queens and wizards and stuff. So I think he was very bold to try to take that classic like archetypal aesthetic and then make it into a street gang kind of thing. But I think if I had, that was my problem, is maybe the way it was marketed, but that was my problem the first time I watched it on Redbox, is I could not get past it, the accents and stuff, and Jude Law.
I wonder too if it would have been better to do more of a fusion, because in some ways it was separate, and I think that's what led to some of the whiplash, is that you've got Londinium and then you've got Camelot with this tower, so you've got like this area where it feels like modern day, set 2,000 years ago. It feels very urban, and then you move locations and now all of a sudden it's very high fantasy, and then you've kind of got a third location where it's very Robin Hood, right, where they're in this cave. But the moving back to back to back, I think maybe they should have just made Camelot like the keep and put like a city around it, and that way they could have fused a little bit more these two worlds, instead of feeling like you're getting this whiplash of like, oh, I thought I was in this urban world and now I'm in high Camelot fantasy.
Yeah, just embrace it.
Embrace it.
Yeah, just go for it. I think also, I'm not sure what you think about, and I don't know enough about the Arthurian legend, but I feel like there was not much female presence, feminine presence in there, beyond sort of every female side character gets basically killed, except for the mage, and which her name is actually the mage. So the entire time I'm like, what's her name? Because I don't know how to. And then in the credits, I think it just says the mage. So I don't. I feel like that also could have helped, because women like to see other girls in pretty dresses and stuff.
Yeah, although I think that is a sort of recurring thing that people get mad at Guy Ritchie for, is that the women in his movies tend to be women, and people don't love that.
Based.
But it is true. I mean, they were a complete non-presence.
There's no Arthur. It isn't Arthur with Guinevere. I'm sure they're, if they're doing the 6-movie cycle, I'm sure that would have been a movie. But
yeah, I read that they were originally, the mage would have been doubled up as Guinevere, but then they just decided to separate it and save her for the later movie.
Fascinating.
I would love. I know this series is dead, but I think there was so much that was good there to start on. I would love if they could just come back to it and say, hey, we're going to give Charlie Hunnam the bag because he did a great job, but we'll just cut out 90% of the CGI, because ultimately you don't need it, and just make a $50 million version of this movie, which would have been profitable, which I think you could do, and keep the character going, because I just thought he was such a good King Arthur. It pains me that they're moving on from him.
Yeah, it's a little surprising that they weren't able to make something work. Give Game of Thrones, because this was 2017, and I think what Game of Thrones ended sometime shortly before this, right? Or, but that was the most successful media property of the 2010s. I think. I'm not sure anything else competes really. It may be just Marvel stuff, but yeah, people were, people are obviously hungry for this setting and this type of thing.
Yes. everybody wants it. And Game of Thrones was, I felt that kind of in the background of this whole thing. Like, oh yeah, we were all still, we were kind of disappointed by the end of Game of Thrones, but we could all have like a really cool something kind of like that, this dark fantasy. And there was actually several Game of Thrones actors who showed up. Roose Bolton and Littlefinger.
Yeah, those two. I was gonna check to see if there was any others, but by the way, I have the movie playing silently in the background while we're talking, and I do see the part where I think he's in the Darklands or whatever. It does show that the king turns into a stone, and he's so heavy that he breaks the deck that he's standing on and sinks into the water.
Yeah.
Well, there's one part right after he vanquishes Jude Law, and they make this fascinating choice for him to, maybe because it's his uncle, but Arthur picks up Jude Law's, he takes him by the hand after he's stabbed him, and he's laying there dying. He takes him by the hand, and then he kisses his hand. And then I think he says, "You make sense of the devil." But again, I have no idea what they were saying most of the time because of the accents.
There's some good lines in this movie.
What were some of the good
line?
lines?
Was a little inscrutable to me. I had trouble with that.
Is that what he said, do you think? Or?
That's what I got out of it. That is what I heard as well.
It's a fascinating thing to say, but I don't know what it means.
There's a few things when Bana, right? This is the opening scene when he hands his crown, I think, to the what's his guy's name? Jaimon Hansu, the black guy. Mm-hmm. I think he says, "Hold the crown, hold it steady." That's a good line.
That's a good line.
Okay.
I might get that on vinyl lettering on my wall. And then I like King Arthur's line, "Why have enemies when you can have friends?" Like that's kind of my. I mean, I'm not some successful guy necessarily, but that's the approach I always try and take. Like if I can, and I had a boss at one time. He's like, if you're ever in a position to give out favors, give out as many favors as you can. Like just like, especially if it costs you very little or nothing, just like,
well, those were two not bad lines.
Yeah. Maybe there's probably some others, but those are just the two I singled out.
I do like. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I wrote down, you want him to think big? Give him something big to think about. Because that was and then I also wrote down, this doesn't smell right. It smells as right as it's ever going to smell. And that was what I think that was my two favorites. Oh, and then want to know what gave me such drive? It was you. But he said that to his uncle, I guess, right before he killed him. I was writing these down because I thought they were bad lines.
I do like that. I like his quips often, especially at the beginning of the movie when he's in full on pimp mode. I'm trying to think of specific lines, but
well, when the Knights of the Round Table, the people who will become the knights, when they abduct him, when they save him, and they take him into the forest. There's one part where he's talking about his parentage, and I can't remember how the line was set up, but Arthur looks at the black guy. I can't remember his name. I would say his character name.
Sir Bedivere.
Bedivere, yeah. And he's like, unless you're my dad, which I think is unlikely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
fun. Right. I like the line when he's just on the horse and he turns around and he talks to the mage and says, "Are you falling for me like I'm falling for you?" Just like ultimate alpha Chad move. No real pickup line needed. Just I'm going right into this thing. And then there's another one where they're saying we don't want to rush you. They start treating him with kid gloves at a certain point. I can't remember what he did. He said, "We don't want to rush you, but the people are rioting and they're ready for their king to return." He goes, "Okay, great. I'm ready. We're going to go to Camelot. We're going to go through the front door." And they say, "Well, how are we going to do that?" And he says, "I thought you said you weren't going to rush me." And that was a good quip too.
Regarding the mage, is she overpowered? Like, I mean,
Yes.
or is Arthur even needed here?
So I actually think she was fine because mostly she kind of like runs cover and just kind of does spooky stuff with animals until she gets the like 1000 XP snake that is 2 feet tall and kills everyone. That scene was a little too much.
I mean, I thought it was cool. It was like, let's bring in a massive snake. Sure, that's cool. But
I think that they didn't tell Charlie Hunnam what that scene was going to look like. There's a scene where she turns into a snake, and it is the largest snake I've ever seen in a movie, like the largest fantasy snake that's ever existed. It's enormous. It's
like
the size
at least 10
of this
times as big
castle.
as the Harry Potter snake.
Yeah, it's like that Harry Potter snake is like nothing compared to how big this thing is. It's so big. And Charlie Hunnam just kind of has like this bemused look on his face, like, cool. But like he doesn't really say anything or do anything there, because I think that they didn't tell him, hey, pretend like you just saw the biggest snake you've ever seen in your life.
Also, can you guys tell me what happened to the snake?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just kills a bunch of people, serves as a great Deus Ex Machina, and then it's just gone.
Does
slithers away.
Jude Law like stab it or something?
No, because he kills the small snake at the beginning, the snake that makes sense, but he does not kill the big snake.
Do we see the druidess after that? Is that the end of her?
I went through it. The snake just shows him leave. The snake just slithers out of the room.
Yeah. It's still alive.
Leave. Okay, at least.
Yeah. And he just goes off into the wilderness and becomes like a cryptozoology thing. But what was the mage the snake, or she was just controlling a snake? I don't really know.
I thought she was controlling it.
Yeah. She was like seeing through the eyes of the snake. But I'm not really sure. She just used magic to make it really big, I guess. Yeah.
All right, so the mage is overpowered.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I know you've already kind of indicated you like Hunnam's performance a lot. Do you find him kingly? Is he kingly?
I find him kingly. I find I'm not sure his journey 100% makes sense, but he starts kingly and he ends kingly, and I do appreciate that. I thought he was kingly. Yeah, what do you guys think?
I believe that he could grow into it. Like, he doesn't quite seem like there, at any point in the movie. Maybe toward that last scene with the Vikings or something, when he's like, you bow to me, you losers, and like maybe there, but
he I actually have never seen this actor in anything else. I think I read that he was in Sons of Anarchy, which I'd never watched.
Yeah.
In Sons of Anarchy, is he American, or is he?
Yeah,
I'm assuming he's British, or
he's British in real life. Yeah,
in real life, right? Okay.
Yeah, he's you've seen him in other stuff, I'm sure.
Probably.
Pacific Rim.
Oh yeah.
Children of Men.
He's in Children of Men.
I don't know what he was.
He's in. I'm a big booster for this movie, Triple Frontier, on Netflix.
Yeah,
he's in that. Yeah,
and he's in Lost City of Z, which is very good. If you guys haven't seen that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that was a big streaming hit. Yeah.
Yes, I forgot about that. Well, as for his kingly qualities, it brings up a very good point from what Ben was saying earlier about sometimes the protagonist of the King Arthur story is, at least to me, does sort of feel like a blank slate, almost like it's almost like you're supposed to, or every man is supposed to see himself as King Arthur in a way. I think. I don't know. That's just kind of how I see it from watching other movies like Excalibur or like The Sword and the Stone or something. It's sort of like a generic everyman figure, but this one does definitely give him more of a persona, a very masculine sort of persona, but like makes him more of his own person, a very British guy, sort of grab life by the balls and go for it kind of guy, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's sort of what he always sort of plays, that
Yeah,
capable, confident guy.
yeah.
Well, and I think, again, Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, they are the chosen one, and they get powers because they are the chosen one. But rarely do you see a movie where the chosen one is chosen because of his lineage, but then that is mediated through competence and charisma, which then gives him his power to actually lead. And that's what I like about King Arthur. It's just like one of the few protagonists who has the blood claim, but then that blood claim isn't just, therefore magic, therefore he belongs on the throne. But no, that blood claim gives him character, gives him charisma, gives him competence, which therefore engenders a actual real claim to the throne. I like that. Yeah,
by the time he learns his lineage, and by the time he interacts with this sword, he's already a successful guy in his domain.
I feel like if you've ever seen a movie called First Knight, starring Sean Connery,
right,
as King Arthur. Anyway, my mom loved this movie because she thought Richard Gere was so hot, and we used to have this on VHS. So I've watched it a few times. It's like a 90s, very lighthearted, like a Danielle Steele version of the King Arthur story.
Not that lighthearted. Sean Connery gets freaking got at the end of that.
Oh, movie. Does he? I thought lighthearted in the sense of moms like it. I feel like I think I've said this before on Twitter, but it's a great King Arthur movie to watch with wives and girlfriends.
Right.
Because it's like the romantic angle. But I feel like the Charlie Hunnam from this, I could actually see, if you want a sequel, we already have the sequel. See, you just watch First Knight and count that as the sequel to King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Because then you just imagine Charlie Hunnam grows up and he's older now and he becomes Sean Connery. I could kind of see it. I can see the progression from like a street Londoner to sort of more of a refined, I guess, Scotsman. Is that what Sean Connery is? Yeah.
Do you, as an Englishman, do you become more Scottish as you age?
Yes. Yeah, you become. Yeah, that's the goal.
I knew it.
Yeah,
by the transitive property, are we all becoming more Canadian as we get older?
Yeah, you just move up northward.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, I mentioned a minute ago that part with the Vikings. Like, they have that big aerial or like the bird's eye shot of this round table that's not finished, and the guys are like, what on earth is this round table? You can't even reach the center. It's such a big round table. But I don't know if you guys caught, there's like this, he's standing on the top of 3 steps and the like Viking guys are on the bottom. It's like that's how the Masonic lodges are set up. Which there are some parallels and stuff with Masonic traditions and like, the coronations of like English kings and queens and stuff.
It's I actually did not catch that because they were doing the whole, like, I don't know if this is a Guy Ritchie thing, but they had a bunch of really silly quips that they were making. Like, what is that? A carousel? No, it's a giant wheel of cheese.
Giordano, you're saying his name in the Italian way. You're saying Guy Ritchie.
It's Guy Ritchie. He's a good guy, huh? He's a good director.
It's true. They make like 6 or 7 quips. None of them land. Not a single one.
I wish I could have been like in the theater, watching that and hearing the audio.
I actually did though. I did actually kind of forget because there's parts of this where it's like they go to the Sword in the Stone. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Sword in the Stone story, and then they're like, they go to the Round Table. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are the Knights of the Round Table. Like, I just would kind of forget it.
I think that was also Chinese George's only line I think that was his name. Chinese.
Yeah,
Kung Fu George or Chinese George. I didn't make
Kung
this
Fu
name.
George. Yeah,
That's what they
his,
call
his
him.
character name is George, but they do call him Kung Fu George at one point.
Okay. And
the guy who calls him that, I recognize that guy. He's in some movie I mentioned the other. I think I told you about it, Giordano, but it was called Bull. It's pretty weird, pretty good though. It's like this really trashy, English mafia sort of thing, know, organized crime in England. And this guy, it's a revenge thing, and it's got an interesting ending and stuff. So
that's the guy who calls him Kung Fu George.
Yeah, the guy who says his character name is Backlack. He's the kind of round, pudgy, chubby, round-faced guy. But the movie Bull is a little dark. It's pretty dark, so not for everyone.
Not recommended.
Speaking of Kung Fu George, he has like 3 lines, and one of them really bothers me, and that is when they're surrounded in the dojo. Charlie Hunnam Arthur is telling everyone to evacuate out of the sewer, and Kung Fu George says no, and the reason he should give is these men are willing to die for you, like they want you to escape. That makes that a great scene, which is when I rewatch it, I just pretend that's what he says. What he really says is they hate black legs and they like to fight. It's like, okay, so these guys are just retarded. Like they're so stupid that they're just willing to fight all these cops who are essentially way outnumber them and are going to kill them. Like, okay. All right.
Guys are suicidal.
Really nice armor that's black, so they're bad.
Yes.
Was that the scene where the guy in the black armor said something about "It's my turn to cook tonight"? It's my turn to cook dinner.
Oh yeah, that guy. He's like, if I don't come back, they'll know something's up. And I was thinking at that part, I'm like, things move pretty slow back then, so I might have actually just killed him or something.
Well, that's also the second time he has a chance to kill him, because they have the standoff where Jude Law has his knife to what's his name, Backlack, to his throat, and Arthur has his knife to that guy's throat, and he kills Backlack, and Arthur just pushes away Vortigern's little lieutenant instead of actually following through, which does not seem true to character for a pimp. Seems like he would just slit the throat and
just kill him. Yeah,
just kill him.
Yeah, that would be the kingly thing to do.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Pimps and kings.
I guess the lesson is pimps are kings, or kings are pimps. I don't know.
Kings are pimps. Something.
Do you guys know much about Arthurian legend beyond? Like, I've never read something about it, or so. Because one thing I'm wondering is, I see a handful of parallels in this story with the biblical stuff. Making every man come to test out the sword. It sounds a lot like King Herod, killing the baby boys and stuff. But is when did these legends originate, and were these people already reading the Bible, and were they just kind of making legends based on the Bible but adapting it for England?
So I liked Arthurian legend a lot when I was a kid. I'm sure there are a lot of biblical motifs. Of course, a lot of them were concerned with chivalry and virtue and honor, stuff like that. I don't think it's as kind of straightforward as adapting Bible stories to a chivalric setting, because there are some weird Arthurian legends too. Not weird to them at the time, but reading them now, they feel like stories that don't really make sense to the modern ear. But yeah, frankly, there's not a ton from this movie that hints at Arthurian legend. You don't go oh, that's Percival. Man, he's really like Percival from the books, Oh, there's Lancelot. Oh, there's Sir Gawain. There's none of that. The characters are not recognizable as themselves.
I think this taps into the Arthurian, the Arthurian legend the same way. It's almost just it's become so archetypal that is just sort of in the background. But I don't know. I can't say I know a whole ton about the origins of Arthurian legend, but I think, yeah, like kind of like Ben was saying, I don't think it was anything conscious, but probably unconscious imitations of eternal archetypal things found in scripture. But don't really see a ton of that in this. Although, I mean, there's a lot of like, I don't know, weird imagery and archetypal imagery, but yeah, I didn't really pick up on a whole lot. I don't really know a ton either. I just watch movies. Most of my understanding of Arthurian legend was like Disney's The Sword and the Stone, which or
that's
Once and Future King. Yeah,
Sword in the Stone's got to be the biggest reference point. That's what when they make a movie like this, they're banking on people having seen that.
Yeah, and that squirrel in that one scene that I was in love with.
Oh yeah,
that was like my when I was like 7. Anyway, yeah, that was like just from picking it up in movies and stuff. And then I always used to think that there was just like a set story, like, oh, I would love to read the original novel of King Arthur, and it wasn't until I was a little older that I realized, oh, it's just a blending of a bunch of different traditions and stories.
Let's see. Anything else anyone wants to get into? I don't know if anyone's seen. Guy Ritchie did a movie more recently that is not really in the style of Guy Ritchie. It's just a very straightforward, kind of. I guess I'd say it's a war movie, kind of a war movie. Not, but The Covenant. Have you guys seen that?
No,
I have not.
It's pretty good. It's just like a straightforward story about a guy. It's Afghanistan, so it's modern. A U.S. An American soldier goes back to Afghanistan to like save the interpreter who had helped him when he was there, and the government had promised to bring him over after, but then they like didn't really fulfill their promise. So he goes to try and figure that out.
Is that a Jake Gyllenhaal movie?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen other people watching it on the plane.
It's probably a plane. It's a plane movie, probably.
Movie. I was going to ask, was Guy Ritchie allowed to make movies after this?
Yes, because
at least he's doing at least one.
Why wouldn't you be allowed to make more movies after making the best movie of the 21st century?
Well, I mean, right? Critically and universally loved.
I saw that King Arthur lost an estimated 150. I mean, the budget versus box office is a pretty close number, but then there's usually a bunch of marketing on top of that you don't see, and then they also the revenue, like the box office, they only get a fraction of that. So, so I heard that they lost about 150 on it, and a lot of people never really get to work again for much smaller failures than that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I mean, after the Sherlock Holmes movies, I think Guy Ritchie is basically.
He did those too? I actually never saw those.
He did the Robert Downey Jr. ones.
Yeah. There was like 2 of those, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like those movies. And also, I think his smaller stuff was profitable, like Snatch and Lock, Stock. So.
Yeah, those are pretty, at least, I don't know, I'm sure they're profitable. They're also kind of iconic movies. So.
And The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Have you guys seen that?
No.
I have not. It's been on I've had that on watch lists for 10 years or however long it's existed. I've always meant to watch it.
I recommend it.
All right.
I recommend it.
After this, I'm down. Like if I can watch King Arthur 1.5 times. I'll watch anything from this guy. This is crazy. Yeah.
By the way, Granite, did you say you have not seen The Young Pope?
I haven't. I have not seen it.
Okay, watch it, and just
I feel
discount.
Like you would like it, Granite.
Yeah, discount episode 10. Just
does he do something gay? So
he.
I didn't. I didn't.
First of all, shame on you. Obviously, I can't believe you use a word like that. But second of all, yes, he does.
Well,
yeah, great soundtrack too.
Yeah, on both actually. The Young Pope has a great soundtrack. So did King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, though. I actually thought it was one of the strongest parts of the movies. Great soundtrack.
It was interesting, and I watched all the credits at the end to see what the songs were.
I'm trying to remember what they were. I must have. I remember that. I mean, there's sort of a modern quality to it, but I don't really remember the music.
It was
Yeah,
modern.
other than that breathing.
The breathing thing is the main thing I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, no slowed down piano versions of Radiohead, which
that's just for trailers.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? You know, everyone go buy the Mambo Wizard.
Yes.
On Amazon or
today,
wherever else.
Mm-hmm.
And then check out How to Take Over the World, Ben's hit podcast.
Yeah, cool.
Subscribed.
What's the last one you put out? It was an old. Who is it?
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan Part 2, I think. And then what else do you have coming up?
So tomorrow is my end notes episode for Genghis Khan, and then Wright Brothers is the next one up. And then I'm going to be revisiting Napoleon in advance of the Napoleon movie that's coming out in November.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Cool.
Yeah, maybe if you want to come back, you could come talk here about Napoleon.
Reading between the lines, I don't know that King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, was universally beloved by everyone on this panel. But if you'll have me back, I would love to discuss the Napoleon movie.
No, you're totally welcome back. Like I said on that Oppenheimer episode, it would have been great. It would have been great to have you there because there's so much that we were speculating on. So
I'm converted, by the way. I'm a huge fan now. After us talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll watch this again in a few years when my kids are old enough.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys. I guess we'll cut it off there.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Take it easy.